Now, hello everyone and welcome to the first real video. Today's topic is a bit controversial and is something that has been talked about lately a lot, and that is the ever-expanding wealth gap and how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So what I want to explain today is the main principle which I believe is the reason why the rich keep getting richer, and is also the principle that I use as well in my investing. And that has to do with a simple thing called compound interest. Now, if you're in the world of business and finance, this is absolutely nothing new to you. You've been doing this for a long time. But if you're not, I believe this video could be very useful. So what I will do is I will hop onto my computer and I will show you a few things that I believe are very important to understand. But before I explain how compound interest works and how you could use it to your benefit, I need to show you something first, which is very relevant to this, and that is how do the wealthy people of the world manage their wealth? What do they buy? What kind of assets do they have? How much percentage do they have in stocks? How much do they have in real estate? How much do they have in different investments? You will see very simply and very clearly that the wealthier you are, the majority of your net worth would be consistent of investable assets, real estate, business holdings, etc. So a very small percentage of your total net worth is your actual place where you live, your car, your cash, and hopefully this will be useful and interesting for you. Let's hop on. So before we get into the meat of this video, there is something that we need to understand, and that is how exactly do the wealthy people of the world keep their net worth? So what do they own? How much of it, and what's the breakdown of their wealth in general? And what I have open here is an article that basically illustrates this very well. So net worth is all the amount of stuff that you own. So your house, your cash, your vehicles, and all the investments that you have. And you can see that the lower your net worth, the bigger the amount of that your primary residence and your vehicles takes. So the richer you get, the more this blue stuff here, that is the investments and business interests, the richer you get, the bigger portion of your net worth do those assets take. So you can see that individuals who have 100 million or more and 1 billion or more, the majority of their net worth is stocks, business interests, real estates, managed assets. So it's fairly obvious that people, for example, like Elon Musk, who have billions upon billions, all the billionaires, they have a very tiny amount of that in cash. So the majority of their wealth comes from the value of their holdings. So the stake that Elon Musk has in Tesla, and the stake that he has in SpaceX, etc. So that is what makes their net worth as big as it is. It does not mean that they have that much cash, obviously. Now, rich people understand that there is a principle that applies to these blue assets here, which is extremely important. And that principle is compound interest. Now, a lot of us have been taught about compound interest in school, but they've never taught us how this applies to finance. And this is especially relevant to stocks, all assets that are basically on financial markets. And I will show you how that works, very simply and very roughly. For example, if you have, say, 10K to invest in stocks, and you buy Google or whatever, and that stock grows to be 10% this year, would mean that you have made $1,000 in the year. Now, making $1,000 in 1 year might sound a bit funny to a lot of people, because yeah, it's decent money, but it's not something crazy. But next year, you're gonna make the same 10% or more, depending on how the market does, on $11,000, not on 10,000. So 10% on $11,000 is It's like $1,100. And you can see how this amount keeps snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And at one point, you might reach a point where you have $100,000 or $1 million. And 10% out of $1 million is $100,000. It's a lot of money. People would be asking you, how the hell did you do that? And that's how basically rich people keep getting richer. It's the way that they invest in financial markets and in assets in general. Let's take a look at a very simple calculation. Say you are 25 years old and you have about $20,000 or euros or whatever your currency is saved up, and you want to invest that. If we take a look at the average stock market return for the last 10 years, that comes up to 13.6% annually for the S&P 500 index, which if you buy a broad market index, you'll pretty much easily match that. To be conservative, I put not 13, but 12% per year. So you start off with your $20,000 and you invest those and you get 12% per year on average. What does that look like? Well, if you invest for 20 years, so you're 25 now, you will be 45, which is, you're not retired yet, but you could use that money. And you put an additional $1,000 per month on average. I mean, when you're 25 and you're in an early stage job, it might be very difficult to do that. But once you're like 30, 35 and you're in a senior position, that will be easy money to set aside. And what does that come up to? So once we calculate, here's the crazy part. You would have $1,207,000 at age 45. Let that sink in. $1,207,000. That's a pretty hefty amount. That's good money. You'll be a millionaire. That's just you've put in 20,000 initially and 240,000 additionally. So that's the amount that you put in monthly is 240,000. So that's your total amount that you put in is just 280,000. It's a lot of money, but compared to what you're getting out, it's nothing. You've basically 5x your money, 6x your money in 20 years. Just by using the principle of compound interest. You've earned $947,000 in interest. That's powerful stuff. Now, let's look at the same scenario, but if you had 25 years instead of 20 years. So right now you will have 1,207,000 when you're 45. Let's see what happens when you are 50. Boom. In 5 years, you make what took you 20. So in 5 years, you've doubled instead of what took before 20 years. Just because you can see here, this is the breakdown by year. When you've made, this is the interest. So you had before 207,000 at year 20. But at year 21, you made, well, this is like $150,000 in 1 year. Then again, even more. This is, I think, about $250,000. Then again, another $250,000. And then again, you're at 2 million. So the more that you have, the more interest works in your favor, the more percentage, because in the world of finance, everything is about percentages. Same thing here, because you're making 12% on 1,207,000. That's a lot of money. Let's see if you're investing for 30 years, so you'll be 55. 4,213,000. Insane. You've doubled again in another 5 years. You can see that this principle is just so powerful. when you've made, you know, how much is it when total deposits interest? See, this is the amount of interest you're making. So every year, the amount of interest you're making increases year by year because, well, your total amount invested is also increasing. Do you understand how the rich keep getting richer? They're using this principle, and the more you have, the more you'll get every year because you just keep stacking and stacking and stacking. So if you have, I don't know, for example, 100 million, let's say, and you do 15% on that, that's 15 million in 1 year. Because it's all about percentages. You need to understand this. I mean, obviously, you're never going to get 12% per year every year. Some year it's going to be zero, some year it's going to be minus, some year it's going to be plus 40, some year it's going to be plus 30. It varies year by year a lot. But on average, over a 10-year period, once you average it out, you get 13.6%. That's why investing can be scary to a lot of people because it is volatile. You could be losing money as well because the markets move. But if you buy and hold long term, you cannot lose. If your investing horizon is 10 years plus, you just cannot lose. You would always be better off than just keeping that money in cash or doing nothing with it. Sure, 1 year you might be losing, but the next year you'll be coming back stronger than ever. And what you also need to understand is what I'm showing you here is completely realistic. Think about it. You could have $20,000 when you're 25. It's not impossible. You could also invest $1,000 a month for the rest of your life. Does that sound like something completely impossible? It is possible. All you need is the discipline and the willpower to do it consistently. And 12% per year, that is average stock market returns. If you do that for 30 years, you're going to have $4 million or euros or whatever the currency is that you're doing. This is not an impossible plan. It just takes time and patience. And this principle is basically the way that Warren Buffett, who is one of the greatest investors of all time, has built his wealth. With the exception is that he's making not 12%, but I think like 25-30% per year because he's a good investor, obviously. So if you go onto this site, you could play around with these numbers and see what works for you. That's it. That's what I wanted to show to you. Hopefully it's been clear and understandable. And if it was, give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. Feedback is, of course, always welcome. And well, you might be thinking of more questions to ask. So how do I start doing this? How do I invest? Where do I open an account? Where do I do, etc., etc., etc.? Well, hopefully in the next few videos, we will be answering some of those questions. But if you want to use that to advantage, as always, you should start doing your own research. You should start getting interested in these things because this could be the future of your wealth. So hop on that computer, read up, find what works for you, experiment, try different things, put some money somewhere, buy a few stocks from a random app. Just the simple act of having, I don't know, $50 or 50 euros bought in Google or Apple or whatever kind of stock will force you to start getting interested, start reading up, start researching this topic. Because once you're invested, your mind starts thinking, okay, I don't want to lose this money. What is going on? Why is it going up? Why is it going down? Let's see the news. Let's see, there's like fundamental analysis and that affects the value. And then there's the news and somebody banned something regulatory. And that's why my stock is going down, but next year will go up because expected results are better. Once you go into this rabbit hole, it gets really interesting. And even if you don't want to be very involved in this, you could still invest very simply with very low amounts just by, using a product called an ETF, which we'll talk about maybe in future videos. But that's it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.